Hi and welcome back again, it's good to see you. Last time I talked about what we think we know about loneliness. If you missed that video, you might want to go back and watch it first, or else stay here and there'll be a link at the end to watch it there too. In today's video, I'll be talking about the BBC Loneliness Experiment, an online survey of 55,000 people around the world on the reality of what people think about loneliness. So today, I'm going to explore 5 unexpected findings from this survey. Number 1, younger people feel lonelier than older people. When you picture someone who's lonely, the picture that people most think of is often an older person who lives alone and hardly sees anyone. And in the BBC Loneliness Experiment, 27% of over 75 said they often or very often feel lonely. Yet the difference between age groups is striking. Levels of loneliness were actually highest amongst 16 to 24-year-olds, with 40% saying they often or very often feel lonely. This makes me wonder why so many young people say they feel lonely. Perhaps they're more prepared to admit to feelings of loneliness than older people who might feel they need to stress their independence. But it was noticeable that when everyone was asked at which point in their life they'd felt lonely, even looking back on their lives when they were older, the most common answer people gave was when they were young adults. So it's not necessarily modern life that's making young people feel lonelier, but factors associated with being young itself. Although we might think of the ages of 16 to 24 as a time of new freedom to have fun, leaving school and having more control over your life, it's also a time of transition, moving away from home, starting college, starting a new job, all of which takes you away from the friends you've grown up with. At the same time, people are trying to work out who they are and where they fit in the world. In addition to this, people aren't used to these feelings of loneliness and haven't yet had the experience to know that they often pass, or the chance to find ways to cope with those feelings, such as distracting themselves or looking for company. Number 2, 41% of people think loneliness can be positive. This finding fits in with the ideas of people who believe that we evolved to experience loneliness because it can be useful, even though it's unpleasant at times. Humans have survived through forming cooperative groups. If people feel they're excluded from a group, then feelings of loneliness might drive them to connect with people, finding new friends or rekindling old relationships. The problem is that feelings of loneliness can become long-lasting, with a serious impact on well-being and maybe even on health. Check out the link to the previous video to find out more about why this relationship might not be as simple as we think. It was striking in this survey that although 41% of all the participants said loneliness could be positive, this rate dropped to 31% in those who told us they often feel lonely. Loneliness can be so miserable and distressing that when it's long-lasting, it can be hard to see any positive side. Number 3, people who feel lonely have social skills that are no better or worse than average. Sometimes it's assumed that people feel lonely because they found it hard to make friends, and help with improving social skills would make a difference. This isn't what the survey found. A key element of social interaction is the ability to tell what other people are feeling so that you can adjust your responses accordingly. Perhaps they're worried about something, or you've accidentally offended them perhaps. One way of measuring this skill is to give people a series of full faces or even just pairs of eyes to assess how good they are at working out which emotion people are experiencing. There was no difference between the average scores of the people who often felt lonely and the people who didn't. There were differences in scores on neuroticism, which is a way of telling how prone to anxiety or emotional ups and downs you might be. So perhaps it's the anxiety provoked by social situations that can make them harder to cope with if you feel lonely, rather than the social skills. Number 4, winter is no lonelier than any other time of year. In the run-up to Christmas, you often see campaigns from charities who help the elderly, featuring pictures of isolated old people. It's a day of the year that's all about gathering with your loved ones to celebrate, so the idea of facing the day alone is something a lot of people would dread. And if you live in the northern hemisphere, then Christmas also falls in the middle of winter, when days are shortest and people are staying in more, leaving you even more isolated if you feel lonely. But the survey found that for many who feel lonely, winter is no worse than any other time of year. They asked people to tell us the time of year and the time of day when they felt loneliest. More than 2/3 of people said winter was no lonelier than any other time of year. The minority of people who did say one particular time of year is lonelier chose winter, but a few even chose summer. At Christmas, many people go to great lengths to ensure that everyone is included, inviting friends over if they know they might be alone. But in summer, if everyone else goes on holiday, you might be the one feeling left behind. So perhaps we should start wondering whether other people might be lonely all year round instead of just at Christmas. Number 5. People who often feel lonely have higher levels of empathy than everyone else. In the survey, 2 kinds of empathy were measured. One was empathy for people's physical pain, how sorry you feel for someone who has accidentally slammed their hand in a door, picked up a hot frying pan, or been stung by a wasp. The other was how much empathy you have for other people's social pain, for someone who's been bullied at school, not invited to a party, or dumped by their partner. There was no difference in empathy for physical pain between the people who felt more or less lonely, but the people who said they often or very often felt lonely scored higher on average for empathy for social pain. Maybe because they've experienced for themselves what it feels like to be left out, they empathise more with other people who find themselves in the same situation. Thanks for watching this video today. You'll see a subscribe button on the bottom right of the screen, so please click that to make sure you don't miss out on any more of my videos. And you'll also see a link coming up now to the next video in this series, where I talk about what we can do about loneliness. Click on the link and it'll take you straight there. Thanks again.